Welcome to For the Sake of Heaviness. My name is Butch.
I am merciful Mike.
I actually got that right this time, man. Look at that.
Look
See
at
that, everyone? We're learning.
we're learning
I'm
to point to
learning.
opposites.
I'm pointing right at Mike. And then in the edit, he'll probably have me going this way. Anyway, welcome to the show, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Is your 2025 off to a good heavy start?
Can't complain, man. Yeah, it's been good so
Yeah.
far. I actually just what did I just grabbed a couple of records. I mean, a couple things I've been needing on the list. I just got Slaughter the Soul by At the Gates on
Nice.
LP, and thanks to a very good friend of mine, that latest Capilla Ardiente album. So it's definitely been a heavy start to the year.
Good,
Thank you, my
good.
brother.
Oh, you are very welcome. I know it wasn't on your list, and I was like, we talked about it, and we both like, Felipe. So I was like, yes, you must own this album. So
Yeah, I was telling my wife, I said, "You this singer's really good. You got to listen to him." So, but
good.
today, everyone look at Michael's shirt. We're going to be talking about Trouble. We're going to rank our out how we like the records. And then we're going to give our favorite song from each one. I guess a little background from both of us on it. Like, when was the first time you got into the band?
Oh boy. Back in, geez, right around I guess 84, 85, and it was kind of funny too because we had gotten, or I had gotten a copy of The Skull, and it was kind of it was either a blind buy or I got it as a gift from a friend or something who saw it in an ad and thought, oh, this must be cool. And I'll be very honest, the first time that we heard Trouble, we just didn't get it. I was like, okay. I mean, and at this point, we're going at the speed of light with Metallica and everything. So when we put on a Trouble record, we're like, whoa, okay, we'll circle back to this at some point, but not right
Right.
now. So yeah, it was early mid '80s. Is the Skull was the first one that we listened to when that came out with
Yeah,
mixed emotions.
I can remember seeing ads in magazines for them around that time, for the first record, and then for sure I remember seeing an ad for the single "Tales of Brave Ulysses,"
Sure.
and then when the Skull came out, I remember like the imagery on the records kind of caught me, but I hadn't heard them yet. It was on the third record. I Blind by we did one of these things where how I mean everyone knows how this used to go. Like you'd go in the store and see
Yep.
this. Oh, that looks cool. Like what's the band look like? And then you flip it over, and I'm like, oh, this is you
Gotta
look at
be
the
good.
front, and then you look at the back. I'm like, this is metal. This
Yep.
is definitely going to be metal. I've seen them in the magazines. I mean, these songs sound cool. So
Sure.
I bought Run to the Light, and I think it was not too long after getting their record. I think we saw them open for King Diamonds
Yep. Same
on
here.
that tour. That's the first time I saw Trouble live, and so that was like we'd already liked the cassette. I mean, yeah, and especially I still love that first song. The Misery Shows on there.
Absolutely.
Um, and seeing him up for King Diamond, I think kind of cemented it for me. A couple of my friends weren't as sure. Still, I think the a little bit of the hippie vibe, like the Sergeant Pepper jacket and the bell bottoms.
Yeah, Bruce
There were a couple of
Franklin's wearing his
people.
headband and his frilly vest and
Yeah,
everything.
it
Yeah,
was it was a weird it's a weird crowd for them to play to. Opening for King.
sure.
It was a cool bill though. So that was my entrance to the world of Trouble, and from there, I went back and got the first one. And I remember hearing Bastards Will Pay on local college radio,
Sure.
and The Tempter. And so I got you know, those are the earlier records, and I've been in love with the band
Ever
since.
since.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of funny, talking about circling back, and the same for us as it was for you. We had heard, the Skull, and we're like, okay, it's really slow. We'll check it out later. But then that tour with Trouble and King Diamond, they were, the two headliners at the very first Milwaukee Metal Fest. And it was then when Trouble came out that my friends and I kind of looked at each other. We were like, "Oh, that
Now I
light
get it.
that light bulb definitely popped up." And yeah, exactly. We were like, "Oh, now we get it." And it was like, "Holy shit!" Yeah, it all clicked at that point. And then we kind of went back and got the back catalog and proceeded forward. So Yeah, good stuff. That was a pivotal moment in my history of Trouble.
Yeah, for sure. That one for me. And then seeing them live again when I was in Pittsburgh, they came around to the Manic Frustration tour, and that show like is still one of my favorite shows of all time. I thought they were good opening for King, but seeing them at Graffiti, they played at Graffiti. I don't know, it was like them. They were headlining, and they had like a band called Collision
Okay.
open for them. I think they were from maybe from New York. Different style, really, but Trouble was awesome. Uh, right from the get go, they opened with the Sleeper and
Yeah.
went right into Rest in P, R.I.P. Right after that. I mean, talk about bang for your buck right away
Oh
at
yeah,
the start of the show. I mean, it was that show was so good. Like I it's probably the best show I ever saw them do. I think I've seen them like 6 or 7 times.
sure.
Been lucky enough to see them. So yeah, that's my long sort of history.
It's kind of funny because, being in the Midwest, I'm in Milwaukee, and obviously, Trouble's based out of Chicago. Um, After that Run to the Light tour, for whatever reason, I personally didn't get to see them again until Plastic Green Head and Simple Mind Condition. They were on tour with Pantera. I missed that whole touring cycle when they were hitting the bigger places and everything. Love those two albums that were out, during that time. But yeah, I didn't get to see them until later on, and it was back in the smaller venues and things like that. So I did miss out on when they were playing the bigger places, as support act.
Yeah, that's interesting because I never thought about that. Like I've only ever seen them headlining, like at or
Sure.
playing like a festival, like in a club theater kind of setting. I never did see any of the tours where they were opening for someone, because there was a lot of buzz around the band, especially around the time of the self-titled record from 1990.
Yep.
Um, and then some of it carried over to Manic Frustration, but the
Right.
timing, we all know when that record came out, what was going on
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
alternative and grunge kind of like wiping the scene a little bit and resetting things. So
Yeah.
it would have
They'd
been, I
they'd
think it
come
would have been
close.
fun seeing them on a big stage.
Yeah, and like I said, I regret that I never got to. I'm very happy that I got to see him as many times as I have, uh, albeit in smaller venues and settings. But yeah, that would have been pretty cool seeing him, in a bigger venue. You know,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it is what
Uh,
it is.
yeah, definitely. In my opinion, people like to when they put together, we like to bounce things around, or everyone likes to make lists, or you do your Mount Rushmores, and it seems like in metal you get a lot of the, well, what's your big four of this and your big four of
Sure,
that. So when you talk about doom metal, I don't think you could talk about, if you had a big four of doom metal, Trouble is solidly in there. It's probably, we could probably have a whole show about it, but for me, they're in there along with Pentagram,
yep,
Saint Vitus, and Candlemass. I mean,
absolutely,
arguably you could, it's kind of weird leaving Cathedral out. They came a little bit later though.
sure,
So and they Cathedral like brought like a little bit more awareness to doom, and I think at that time. But Trouble for sure is one of the most important bands, I think, in metal in general, really, but especially in doom metal. And if you want to get into stoner rock and stuff like that, I mean,
sure.
the band, as their sound widened, I mean, they just touched on a lot of things. They've influenced so many of us.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the lore of Trouble runs pretty deep too. You've probably heard the story about how Hammett and Hetfield, were playing or went to see Trouble. I forget the complete details, but they wanted to see, hey, what do Bruce and Rick got their heads tuned at? How are they getting that tone? And they were like really into it, and those guys were pretty protective about the whole thing and like, nah, man,
Yeah.
nothing to see here. Move along. But just the fact that, even to this day, there's pictures of Metallica and Hetfield's got his Trouble patches, and they still pay homage. So yeah, I agree with you that Trouble runs deep in the metal community in general, not strictly just doom or stoner or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially of the guys that they uh everyone in the band branched out into different things, touched on different things at times. But Eric, I think, um his career, like, including, he went from the doom of Trouble to, like, then he had Lid,
Yep.
which was more like, a psychedelic
Yep.
stoner kind of thing. And his solo record
Yep.
runs the gamut of stuff. There's really doomy stuff on there, and then there's more pastoral, mellow
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and
Eric always had that psychedelic side to him, being, huge Beatles fan, loved Lennon.
yeah.
And a lot of that did bleed through into Trouble, especially Manic Frustration. But, once he was, outside of the realm of Trouble, between Lid and Blackfinger and, his solo stuff. Yeah, I mean, he was, restraints were off. He could do whatever he wanted, and a lot of that influence really came through.
Yeah, brilliant singer, and he's well missed.
Oh, every day, every day.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I shouldn't say funny, but I haven't really been able to listen to Trouble much at all since Eric's passing. Here and there, I've kind of leaned a little bit toward more Blackfinger if I'm going to put something on.
Hmm.
So knowing that we were doing this and prepping up for it, it just kind of felt fresh again because I had removed myself from these albums for so long, and it felt good. And I kind of forgot, man, just how freaking good these are. And I'll say this too as we do this: there's no such thing as a bad Trouble album. Just
Exactly.
some are better than others. However you decide to rank it, whatever your opinions are. But I mean, if we're being frank, there is no such thing as a bad Trouble album at all.
Yeah, I think they're all good. And I'm glad you brought that up because that actually was, some bands catalogs, there are dogs
Oh yeah,
in the catalog. This is just a catalog that, like you said, I mean, I think a lot of it too, especially when it comes to, I don't know, the first five records, a lot of times it depends on where you dropped in with the bands. I mean,
sure.
for people like our age, I think in general though, a lot of depends on where you came in
Yeah,
with
no,
Trouble, what you like more. Some people like that stoner, the more 70s, some like the more metal kind of vibe that
yeah,
they had on the first couple records. So, yeah, but all the records I think are worthy.
definitely. I think everybody's starting point or entry point into any band, that first one that you hear is, always going to be your favorite, maybe because it is that good or for nostalgia reasons or whatever. And that's fine too. Everybody's got their reasons and stories behind it. And that's what makes it so awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
All
Butch, would you like
right,
to
man.
start this one?
Sure.
All right.
Um, like we said, I don't think any of these records are bad.
No,
I just like some more than others. And I love Kyle Thomas to death. I love his voice. Um, but for me, in terms of the catalog, I'd probably go to this one the least. I do like the record a lot.
yeah,
When it came out, I listened to it quite a bit. I still return to it from time to time. But and I think Kyle is brilliant on it, to be honest with you. I just think some of the songs maybe veer a little bit more towards kind of that area like Rick was in with Wet Animal
yeah,
or something, kind of like it's got a little bit of a modern kind of alternative kind of twist on it at times. It's not like they went like full on alternative metal or anything like that, but there's just
sure.
like maybe a little bit gr- grungy is not the right word, but I think you get the hint. Like it's more like it's sometimes it's less of the things I love the most about the
Right.
band, and it's a little bit more like modern metal sounding or something.
I agree with that too. Tone wise, and you know what? Since we're talking about it, I'll bring mine up too. I think tone wise, there was a bit of like the sign of the times in the tone of this album, and for me, it was apparent right away. So I don't know if that's kind of what your thoughts
Yeah,
are that way.
yeah. I think it's more of its time a little bit, and I mean I guess every record is of its time, to be honest with you, but yeah, like I said, I mean it just some of it calls back to that Wet Animal project a little bit more than
Hmm.
um I don't know. There's some good stuff on here though. I mean, if we're talking, we said we're going to talk about our favorite
Yeah,
songs on the records. I go back and forth on here. I really like When the Sky Comes Down,
big time.
and Hunters of Doom is probably the other one. I remember hearing that when the live videos were popping up when Corey Clark was in the band,
Right.
which was whatever. I mean, I loved Corey and Warrior Soul. That whole the live stuff coming out at the time of the band with Corey was a little bit rough to watch. I was glad that Kyle ended up back in the band, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
like I think he really liked the songs that they were working on. I remember hearing for sure Hunters of Doom, and I think Sucker might have been one of the other ones.
Yeah,
Um, so I'll go with When the Sky Comes Down is my favorite on this one. I think it's a powerful opener, and has a lot of the stuff I love about the band in it.
definitely. Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I think When the Sky Comes Down is most likely my favorite too. Although Paranoia Conspiracy is killer. Um, I was lucky enough, my final days of the Doomfest, I had trouble headline, and these songs came out raging. How
Yeah,
we've talked about that, how sometimes you hear them on a record and you're like, oh yeah, they're really good, but then it translates into the live setting and you're like, holy crap, man,
yeah,
that's
really
just
good live.
incredible.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, I when the sky comes down, yeah, that's probably the best. I got a soft spot for Butterflies too, just because it's kind of a departure. It's a little bit different, and Kyle sounds great on that one too.
yeah, and I always thought like I don't know. I mean, if we can't have Eric in the band, I like the way that Kyle. When I first heard that Kyle was singing for them, back initially back around '99 when Stoner Hands
Hmm.
of Doom was when Eric
Yeah,
wasn't. It was between time periods when Eric was in the
yeah,
band. Like I couldn't. I was trying to picture that in my head because I knew Floodgate and knew Exhorder,
right.
but I think does the old stuff justice, and he's powerful live.
Always, definitely. He's a presence on the stage live, and I
Yeah,
thought the same thing too. Being familiar with Floodgate, and Exorta, I was like, man, how is this going to fit in? Two very different vocal styles, but it works. It really does. And I don't think Kyle tries to. He doesn't try to mimic Eric. I mean, he puts his spin
no,
on it. He does it justice, and pays tribute or however you want to put it. But it works, and I do. I love Kyle and Trouble. I think he does a fantastic job.
yeah, I'm looking forward to the next record, seeing what they
Yeah,
come
same
up
here.
with.
Same here.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number how many records are there? Seven?
Yeah.
That's number seven. So all right, so number six. Um Again, I mean I like this record, but when it came out, I have to admit I was kind of disappointed with it, and that's Plastic Greenhead.
Okay.
Um I think part of the reason was I really love Manic Frustration.
Yeah.
And for me, um, two things with this one. First, I kind of feel like sometimes bands put out two records in a row, or they could even be spaced apart a little bit, but where for me this is like Manic Frustration but not as good.
Okay.
It's
Fair
got the
enough.
same kind of vibe for me. There's a couple of songs on here like and I think this illustrates it for me. Below Me and Long Shadows Fall, I mean, basically, first of all, kind of like by the numbers fast song, like Sleeper,
Hmm.
RIP, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But also those two songs like kind of sound exactly the same to, to me
Yeah.
a little bit. And they the way that on streaming they had them, the Spotify had them flopped or
Yeah.
something. But it's odd to me that they have them back to back
Yeah.
on the record because they're both that same kind of vibe. But
Do you know why they're
again,
flopped on Spotify? Because when they put the digital information on the CD for those, they
uh,
screwed it up there. And I'm assuming Spotify does a lot of their listings directly lifted digitally from CD files
uh,
or everything. So if you have one of those CD players that has, the information that
right.
shines, it's flip flopped on the CDs too.
Huh, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's just an error nobody caught, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. But I mean overall, I mean there's nothing wrong with this record. I mean the Eric sounds great on it. The playing's great. There's definitely some great songs on it. Opium Meter is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Freaking heavy as hell. And also I'll just get to it since I'm talking about it. That's my favorite song on this record. I mean just like insanely heavy.
Yeah. Those riffs
Uh,
are just thick.
yeah. I mean Plastic Greenhead is good. I like the eye. When they get into like um the more psychedelic stuff on the record, that's where I start to draw back a little bit. I'm
Okay.
not real hip on the Porpoise song. Um, I get again like Below Me and Long Shadows Fall. I like them, but they're kind of like it's kind of like a for me. It's kind of like well, I like those two songs, but I like these other songs that sound like it
Sure.
better.
Yeah.
The cover of Tomorrow Never Knows on here is fantastic. By the way,
I love it.
I
Absolutely
mean,
love it.
great. It's a great Beatles cover. I mean, their covers
Yeah.
of Beatles songs. I mean, that and Come Together are fantastic.
Yeah. I think they
So
nailed that cover too. I mean, they put their whole spin on it. Just everything about the way that they did that is perfection.
yeah, and I think seeing them live on this tour, I don't know. I don't know if it's seeing the two tours kind of back to back. Something seemed a little bit off with the set for this show. I saw the Cathedral played with them that night. It was a good show
Hmm.
overall, but
Sure.
I just something about like the record and then the tour, like it just I do like it. It's a good record. It's
Sure.
just like of the ones they did with Eric, this is my the one I go to the least. But
Sure.
again, that's like still a lot.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha. All right. Well, kind of the same. And we, like we've been saying, there's no such thing as a bad one. Simple Mind Condition. It just happens to be one I don't reach for as much. But then there's times I put it on and I think, why don't I reach for this more often? There's some, really good stuff on this. I love the opener Going Home and Mindbender
mhm.
is fantastic. Um, my absolute favorite song on here though is The Beginning of Sorrows. Just so much emotion in Eric's voice and in the lyrics, and having Ole playing the piano over it and everything.
Yeah.
It just tugs at your heartstrings. Just such a good song and a good album closer as well. So, funny thing is, I caught they would come up to Milwaukee. There was a club called
Mhm.
Vinook's Lounge, and that kind of became Trouble's um, like almost full dress rehearsal before tour venue.
Right.
They would always come up to Milwaukee and play before they do Chicago. Um, two funny things. One time on that tour cycle, because they came back twice. Um, Rick did not play. Rick's wife had become pretty ill, and he did not make
Yeah.
that. So it was only Bruce, in which he did a tremendous job. Filling it all in, just being, one guitar player. And I mean, let's face it too. I think we have to put Rick and Bruce in the same category as, Tipton Downing and Denner Sherman. Talk about
And
a
Gorham
legendary.
Robertson. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Murray and
And Smith, yeah,
yeah,
yep,
and Smith.
yep, definitely. They're just, it's a legendary duo. But then the other time, I think it was St. Patrick's Day, they came back through on that. I can absolutely pinpoint that was the day that I got tinnitus. They were so fucking loud that day. And normally I always like to hang up close, everything.
Yeah,
I was like, no, I gotta go to the back. And even at the back, I had my back against the window and back of the venue, and it's just I was like, I just could not believe it. And my ears have been shot literally ever since that show.
man.
So, but Simple Mind Condition, yeah, that would be my next one as we ascend to number one.
All right, we'll just keep talking about that one. That's my number what is it? One, two, three,
That'd be
four,
your five,
six. Yeah.
six, yeah.
Six. I don't know. Forget the numbers. We're
It's
just
just
going in
it's just
order from
numbers.
least to most. I kind of wish I wish I had your record jacket, man. This is a reissue of it, and I mean I love this down here that
Yeah.
Martin Popoff put together. I think this is
Eric
great.
hated that they did that. He was so upset when they re-released it with the four panel cover like that.
Yeah,
He wasn't happy.
it's not great. I could see why he was upset about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this is really cool.
Yeah.
Real good imagery. Fitting for the record, I think. I was pleasantly surprised by this record when I got it. The first time through, I wasn't sure what to think. I think it's Trouble's most diverse record. I
Yeah.
think it's also the one they really like kind of like step out of themselves the most on. Like there's so many different things on this record like that you hadn't heard before on a
Right.
Trouble record really. Beginning of Sorrows, for example, piano ballad like that.
Yep.
Fantastic song. Also my favorite on the record. Um just kind of like different for them. Perfect way to end the record like you said. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
You had the heavy ones, the your typical like Trouble kind of stompers like Going Home and
Yeah.
Mindbender. But then you have like Arthur Brown's Whiskey Bar, which is a
Right.
little bit, you see the title and then it's like the song kind of like goes between like these odder kind of parts, but then like it's kind of doomy at
Yep.
the same time too. It's a really interesting song. Ride the cover, Ride the Sky on here
Yeah.
again, fantastic.
Yep.
Um, I just think it's a good record, overall. I just, it just the only thing it can't get any higher is because of the ones that are in front of it. So
Right.
um it's a good record. It's a you know, um it showed they still had a lot in them with that lineup. It's I would have liked to have seen them do more together. We played with them a couple times on this tour here in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh and out in Cleveland, and they were, really fun to watch live. Um, so yeah, I mean,
And we got to say
so this
too,
is the next one.
it was the debut of
Chuck,
our good friend Chuck
yeah,
Robinson. Yep.
Chuck.
Did a killer job on that. I
He
love watching
didn't.
Chuck play on that Live from Stockholm concert too. He's just up there
He's a hoot man. I
gagging
love,
along. Yeah,
I
Chuck's
love
great.
Chuck to death, man. Yeah, good album, man.
All right. This might surprise a few people. Um, I know a lot of people, even it's like even in the last couple of years, a ton of people I see list this as their absolute favorite Trouble album. Like I said, I love it. Great stuff. Saw this tour with King Diamond, but my next one is Run to the Light. Um, I think I just like the other ones better. There's always been, the production issue with this one.
Hmm.
And rumors always had it that the original mix of this is way heavier and does exist. I've never
Huh.
been able to get a straight answer, but hopefully one day that'll see the light of day. But I don't know. And it's Born into Prison is probably my favorite song on here. Just good driving. That riff
Hmm.
on there is so good. But Misery Show is legendary song. You
Yeah,
can't beat
tremendous.
that. Title track is good. Um, Born in a Prison is definitely that's my go-to. I can jam to that. Peace of Mind's good too. But yep, this would be my next one on the way up.
Right. Let's keep going. Uh, again, it was my first record um, from Trouble, so I didn't have really anything to compare it to at the time. I liked the record.
Sure.
As I got the other ones, though, it fell back a
Yeah.
bit. I still really like this record. I think the thing that stands out to me about this record or is it's kind of like some bands have a transition record, and I think
Yeah.
this album is that for them. They kind of it still has the doom metal of the first two records, the title track
Yeah.
Run to the Light in the beginning, the Misery shows all like solidly like metal, but then you got like Thinking of the Past and
Yeah.
Tuesday's Child, Born in a Prison, that we're starting to lean more towards what would come with the next record,
Right.
which is a more stripped back, just straightforward, like 70s proto metal, punch you in the face,
Right. Right.
kind of still heavy as hell, but more less like overt like metal,
Yeah.
so to speak, and leaning more on like those kind of grooves and stuff, that the dirty 70s kind of grooves. So this kind of falls into that. It's kind of like it's not it's half of it's kind of like the first two, and then
Sure.
half of it's kind of like what was coming. I still think it's a good record. I do like to go back to it from time to time because again, I like to relive, the first one they had it. And honestly, I spend so much time listening to some of the other ones that it's refreshing
Yeah.
to go back to it and really
Absolutely.
like hear these songs are going to be like, oh yeah, I really like Thinking of the Past. And these songs are cool. I wish I would have seen them play the Misery shows. I did see Blackfinger
Yeah.
play the Misery shows live with when he had Matt Tuitt and Terry Weston playing guitar
Yeah.
for him, which was cool. But it would have been nice to see them. I remember seeing them open for when they opened for King Diamond. I'm like, surely they're going to open with that. And then they opened with the Tempter,
Yeah.
and I'm like, they didn't play it. And I'm like, how do you not? That song
Missed
is great.
opportunity.
Yeah. My favorite on here is the beginning. I
Yeah.
just that song is just so heavy,
Yeah.
just so doomy and like different on here. I think Run to the Light's probably Run to the Light be my third. My the Misery shows has always been, up there. It's just
Yeah.
in later years in the beginning really worked its way into me. So
Yeah.
that's my favorite off this record. I wish I could go back and relive that concert again.
I know.
Um, I wish I could relive listening to this record for the first time too. Just
I know that first discovery, that adrenaline rush and high that you get from hearing it, and
yeah,
yeah, I like what you said though, Butch, because you're absolutely right. Because the first two albums I've always considered a pair, and then the Def Jam, Def American, I've always considered a pair. So this was always like that bridge album. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, where it kind of fills that gap in between those.
yeah,
So yeah, I know. I wish I could go back. Luckily enough, there's a and it's on you can find it on YouTube, but the Metal Fest from '87 set that we saw with King Diamond is actually on YouTube. The footage itself is a little on the grainy side, but the audio is pretty
yeah,
good. So when that first got posted, yeah, I did the same thing. I was like jumped in a time machine, man. I'm like, I know I'm right there up against the stage somewhere.
yeah.
15-year-old me. So all right, my next one would be Plastic Green Head. Um, I know that this was kind of referred to a little bit as a comeback album. I think this was like 3 years, 4 years removed from Manic Frustration.
Yeah.
And I don't know, a lot of people, maybe they missed that tidbit, but this is the first album that Ron and Ole actually were on together. They had never played together up until this point. So it was kind of neat, getting those all original members back in and playing, even though they hadn't played before. I'll be very honest. Some days I swear this can be my number one album because
Wow.
I really, really enjoy this album. I took a chance on buying this disc when it first was released. Metal Maniacs had a really good write up about it and just,
Right.
showering accolades on top of it. And when I got it, I was like, holy shit, this is really good. Just good production, thick riffs, everything about this was great. From right out of the gate with the title track, I was just like, "Oh, this is going to be really really good." Like you though, Opium Eater is probably my favorite, just because those riffs are so damn thick, man.
Yeah, dude.
And just that chorus too. Opium Eater, just so damn heavy. Oddly enough, and maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's because I am a Monkees fan. I love Porpoise Song on here. I know a lot of people are like, skip that one, but I love it. I listen to it every single time. And then, yeah, the Beatles cover is perfect. So, yeah, nothing bad to say about it. But yeah, favorite song, Opium Eater, followed very closely by the title track. So, if we're going to look at this as kind of a comeback or, after the last two, great album. Loved it.
Yeah. Right
Alrighty.
on. Um, for a while, this probably would have been my third favorite Trouble album. Over the years, it kind of came down just a hair, but Manic Frustration.
Yeah.
I My experience with this record is, of course, I had the other ones up through the Def Jam, the first one, or the Def American. I'm an idiot. Def
I keep
Jam,
saying Def Jam too. It's all good.
and and I'd heard Memories Garden on WDVE in Pittsburgh. Like
Okay.
back then, sometimes DVE would actually play metal that wasn't and hard rock that wasn't in the mainstream.
Sure.
Things were about to change though, but I thought the song was pretty cool. And then they were playing. It was kind of like a last minute decision. I'd heard they were playing Graffiti, and I'm like, I didn't know anyone else going. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going by myself. So I did. I went up to the show. I mean, yeah,
And
big
aren't you
brave me
glad you
going.
did?
Yeah, I am because man, when they came out, man, they opened with the sleeper, and like I was like, that put me through the freaking wall.
Yeah.
That song, I hadn't heard it before. I was like, the only song I'd heard from this record is Memories Garden, and I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I hadn't seen them since '87, and they were just that show was godly. They were tremendous. They played a good mix of stuff, concentrated mostly on this record. They played "Come Touch the Sky," "Excuse Me," "The Sleeper." Pretty sure they played "Fear." I know they played "Memories Garden." They might have played the title track as well, and then a good bit from the self-titled. Then a few of the older ones,
Yeah.
probably less than I would have liked to have heard, but they were just so freaking good, man. And I was just like, it just like redoubled like how I was like so into, between this record and then what year did this come out? Let me see here. Let me put
90
my spectacles
92, I
on.
think.
Yeah, like 92. So, you know, in the years between like when this came out and then the Church Within by the Obsessed came out and
Yeah.
Typo Negative, had records coming out and um I was just like it was just pulling me back and Cathedral had records. It just pulling me back
Yeah.
into like I was really getting into Doom. I mean, I'd always liked Doom, but I was, really like getting into it now. This record like isn't the doomiest thing they've done. It's more like a, 70s hard rock,
Yeah.
record, but it's a phenomenal record. I mean, the playing, it sounds great,
Yep.
the singing's great, the playing's great. I mean, the double guitars killer on here. Um, all these songs are good. I mean, I can't think of there's not a song on here I would skip. I love Mr. White is phenomenal. That
We'll just keep
that
talking
vocal,
about it.
yeah, that vocal line in Mr. White in the verse, I love that.
Yeah.
Just kind of like mellow is not the right word, but kind of like emotional, and then
Very.
um, just such a good, just such a good record. And again, like the Sleeper, my favorite song off
Yeah.
this record. I just think the freaking first three songs in this record just like pound you
Yeah.
hard, like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Right from come to doom 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 doom.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I remember seeing that live. Bruce doing the backups like excuse me. Just and Sleeper, I think, is like one of their
Yeah.
greatest song. Top five Trouble song for me. A song I wish they would always open with. I just think it's a
Yeah.
killer
It's a
opener.
badass song. I mean, yeah, those first three, and I'll even throw Fear in there too. It just comes out and relentlessly just drives into you. I mean, they there's no slowing down for the first four songs. Then you hit Rain, which is a great song, gives you that little
Yeah,
bit of a mellow, a little more emotion. Tragedy Man is great. You flip it over and you got Memories Garden. I love Strawberry Skies. My favorite song on here, believe it or not, and it's just by a hair. I love Mr. White. It's
that's a
got such
great
a
song.
cool groove to it. The chorus is just cool. If you're privy to whatever he's talking about, it just makes sense. And I love how Eric always had a cool way of like recycling certain lyrics into other
Yeah,
songs. So like when he references Black Shapes of Doom and Mr. White, it's cool. It just ties things together. He was always very aware of that. He liked to end songs with certain lyrics that would carry over either to the next song or maybe in the next album. And just he liked continuity, and I always like that about how things were put together lyrically. So yeah, just badass album. And this one, I'm sure you feel the same. This one kind of can interchange at any moment with the other Deaf American album.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, in a perfect world, that record and this next one would have been huge records. I think
Yeah.
timing is everything. I don't even know if the grunge thing didn't happen. Like I still feel like Trouble was always kind of like on the outside of things just a little bit because they had that 70s vibe that now is like way more in
Yeah.
vogue than at the time. It was like,
Yep.
man, them really stepping in. They were doing something that like very few bands were doing, and they did it phenomenally. Like,
Yep.
but so that's my next one.
Yep.
And I love this record. When I got it, like it's not that the other albums aren't song oriented that came before it, like they are, but some of them are a little bit longer. Um, these are like very like I don't know what it's like all the fats cut off completely, like
Yeah.
straight ahead, straight up compact, great songs, um, great playing. It sounds good. Um, the cover's cool. I think the cover's cool.
I love the cover.
Um,
It just exudes badassness.
yeah, I mean the riffs are I mean, there's so much groove on this record. At the End of My Days and Psychotic Reaction, like groove for days. You get the faster songs like R.I.P. and the Wolf, and
Yeah.
um, I love Black Shapes of Doom. All is Forgiven. Tremendous, tremendous song. I love that song so much. It's my favorite song on this record, and I'm so glad that I've got to see them play it live because it's just an amazing song. And I don't think it gets because this album kind of had a little bit more notoriety than anything else they did. It kind of gets overshadowed by At the End of My Days and Psychotic Reaction that had videos
Yep. Yep.
on MTV. So, and then the Misery Shows is cool. Funny story about the Misery Shows that deals with the Manic Frustration tour. Well, funny to me in a oh man, I got caught kind of way, but I don't know. We're at the I'm at the gig and I'm standing in the first three rows. I mean, it's in the club, it's standing room only kind of thing, and
Sure.
they're playing the Misery Shows, and honestly, it has nothing to do with the song, but I just happened to yawn at one point during the song, and Rick saw me, and he did one of these kind of things, like, I caught you. What are you doing? And I've
Wake
always
up.
thought it's one of those things. I'm like, oh my god, because I didn't want to be like, oh man, you're boring me with this. But
Right, right.
I always thought it's a cool song though. But like I said, that's a memory I have of the band that is just
Yeah.
one of those concert memories that it's in my, if I had a top 10 of things that I think for me that were funny that
Sure.
happened in shows, that's definitely one of them. Be like yawning during one of their.
And getting caught.
It's only because I'm fat and can't breathe. So
Oh, that's hilarious, man.
yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, what a
that was my next one too, for sure. Yeah, and I go along with absolutely everything you said. I want to kind of go back to something you said earlier too. You know, yes, these two albums as a pair should have been huge. And I do agree with kind of what you said before. I agree with your sentiment that I think up until these albums came out, everything was at the speed of fucking light. Thrash was in its absolute
mm-hmm,
glory days, and Trouble was still on the peripheral doing their thing. But then when these kind of came out, and I don't know if it was too little, too late, or whatever, but I truly think not enough people recognized these albums for their greatness and not relying on speed, but composition and craftsmanship
right,
and lyrics, and it kind of I remember kind of being brought back down to earth, so to speak, and really like, God damn, man, you know, you can be slow and riff and be just as heavy as anything that was on Ride the Lightning or Rain and Blood or anything like that. So um, it is. It's undue that they didn't get the recognition on these two albums because, like you said, had it stuck around and the way things are today, how much people just love this kind of vibe. Who knows where it would have gone from there.
yeah, for sure.
Favorite song on here? Ooh, tough one.
It's
Definitely.
tough, man.
Oh man, yeah, I know any of them, any of them. I love Black Shapes of Doom, but I think R.I.P. might be my favorite, and I love when they would open with this. In later days, it just,
Yeah,
it's just so, just such a vibe to set the tone on stage. So, freaking amazing album.
I always loved in RIP too. When they be after the verse. What's the lyric? Let me see. Let me look the lyric up real quick. My lyric sheet. What the hell? Anyway, I'll probably butcher explaining this anyway. But one of the things I love about it, and I've tried to explain this in bands that I've been in over the years, where I'm like, I want you to put something in there that sounds like this. When before it comes into the chorus, after that line from the Garden of the Brave, and it's just a guitar chugging, and you get that one. They'll do that note on the guitar on the uh I don't know. It's one of the, just like one of these notes that I just love. I'm like,
Sticks with you.
it's impossible, obviously, to explain it, but I love it. And so if you don't, you know, Anyway,
I know what you mean, though. It is. It's just one of those little nuances that like you anticipate every time you listen to it, where
it's
somebody
just
else
like a
probably is
little
like,
thing that
"What?"
takes it from being just a chug to like they inject this
Yeah.
little thing in there that's just something extra.
Yep. Yep. And Wartown and Franklin are good at doing that too. They always add those little, trademark quirky little things here and there that just, make it what it is.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're down to our final two. And
Man,
if you're paying attention, you guys know what's left. So let's see here. What do you got?
see, this is so hard that I'm thinking like, do I call an audible on this or do I just go with the order that I had it in? We're just gonna go with the order that I had it in. Um, nor man, on any
I
given
know.
day, this could be my number one, and the reason for that is because it has my two favorite Trouble songs of all time on it, and those are the anchor songs. It's
Sure.
"Pray for the Dead"
Yep.
and "The Skull." I mean,
Talk about bookends, right?
yeah, I mean, you just don't. They're so like when I think of like the epitome of doom songs, it's I think of the two of them. I think they're the two greatest songs the band ever did.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the whole album is good. Obviously, I love The Wish. I love that the whole thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
Man, when he's I would rather
Die.
die. Like it's just freaking killer. Gideon is awesome. All these songs are great. It's just that I think like I kind of feel like Fear No Evil and Truth Is What Is, or maybe like a, a hair back from the debut. That I think this album is more loaded with it's those two songs and the Wish like kind of like
Yeah.
cement the whole thing for
Right.
me.
Right.
It's and on any day like the one that I pull for the most is I actually like probably reach for this one the most because of those songs.
Right.
Man, I just love this record. I would have loved to have seen them at this time. This artwork is so like
Yeah.
creepy too, man. Like just your 80s heavy metal covers. Like I remember seeing this in magazines, wondering what the hell do these guys? I hadn't heard them yet. I'm like, what do
Yeah.
these guys sound like? Like this is freaking amazing. Yeah, man, I love this. Pray for the Dead. For years I wanted to cover that. I finally got to do that with the Magma Rise guys.
Did a phenomenal
Um,
job, by the way.
thank you. I just love that song so much. And man, the skull like just gets me every
Yeah.
time. It's so moody and um epic and so heavy when the guitars come.
Yeah.
Man, it's just and the subject matter is so different from what other bands were doing. You
Yep.
had you know Slayer and the thrash band singing about plagues and Satan and
Yeah.
death, and here you got a narration of the crucifixion.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's so, and because of that, they often get cast as like a Christian metal band, which I think the band is denied for. They have the influence obviously
Right.
in the lyrics, but
Yeah, I think it was right around this time that they kind of unfairly got that white metal tag because
yeah,
everything was dark and evil and Satan but Eric has said many times, he was a very spiritual person and he took the word of the book to heart, but he interpreted it in his own way. And
hmm
I think a lot of the times that's why he found, those verses fascinating. And he would be able to kind of meld them into how he believed and how they would come out and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't think a lot of people quite understood that, as far as, your teenage consumers who are getting into all things metal. Because I know that, Evil sold. And if it was something on the lighter side, I was like, we don't want that junk. That's not heavy. But man, if you missed the boat on those first few, you should definitely be going back. So,
yeah,
and that album too, just out of every Trouble album for me, that album has like the biggest cerebral vibe thing going on where, and you and I have both listened to that album, countless times, but it's fresh every single time. It
hmm
just puts you in that headspace and just, the way it makes you feel and think while you're listening. Just it's just unmatched, unmatched. So, all right, there's a reason that one's not my next one. So, here's my number two. And just as good. I mean, a lot of times people say, "Well, everybody's got to start someplace," and that doesn't always have the greatest connotation. But man, tell me this is not like one of the all-time greatest starting places of all
Seriously.
time. This just hits, you know, the Tempter, all-time classic. I don't care who you talk to, has to be spoken in every single conversation of greatest metal openers. It's just so damn good. The Assassin, Victim of the Insane, Revelation. I mean, just one right after the other. And you think about how many of these stayed in the set lists, over the years too. Bastards Will Pay, just a killer album. And I do want to say, those the first two albums before Ron Holzner joined the band, I think Sean McAllister deserves a little credit here too, because his bass lines on those first two,
Hmm.
stellar, stellar, just drives these two albums. So I'm hard pressed to pick my
It's
favorite.
tough, man.
Gets worse as we go along here, but yeah, I'm probably gonna go with the Tempter. I'd be stupid not to. But everything on here, it's just amazing, just amazing. So, yep, there you go. But one of the better
Right
debut
on.
albums of all time.
So obviously my number one, we're just gonna pile on. Like I said, I mean, I could go back and forth. I think when I have to think about it, what makes this one stand out as a number one for me is just like you just said. I mean, it's fucking banger after banger. I'm a
Yeah,
tempter, assassin, victim of the insane, revelation. I mean, it doesn't stop.
never.
Bastards will pay, the fall of Lucifer, end time, Psalm 9. And then the record, has their great cover, Tales of Brave Ulysses, tacked onto it
Yep.
on this one. But man, just what a killer record. So many great songs. I mean, it has to be, I also think the Skull too, but in terms of like the greatest metal records of the 80s, I mean, this is definitely in there.
Yeah.
It has to be in the conversation. Greatest doom metal records of all time. It's in the
Yeah.
conversation. Um, maybe not in the conversation for best album covers of all time. Although I really do like the album cover. I'm just saying, like some of these, you get these 80s like Trouble and Fate's Warning record covers.
Yeah.
When you get to Night on Brocken and some of these, um, uh,
Looks like
man, I
kids
just,
drew them.
yeah, I really dig this record, man. I love Bastards Will Pay. I think that's probably my favorite song in this record. As much as I love The Tempter, um, and man, but Victim of the Insane has that real quick riff in
Yeah.
the middle too that you only hear like one time
Yeah.
in
Yep.
there. I don't know, man. It's just such a good record. It is hard to pick one. I've always like Assassin's kind of like a more like um I always compare that song with like what Metal Church when we talk about like Hitman
Sure.
on
Yep.
that record. They're kind of like oddly enough, kind of like the same topic, but it's kind of like, Assassin's kind of like just like the most straight up metal thing that maybe Trouble
Yeah.
ever did. There's really nothing doomy about it, and there's nothing like uh 70s, proto metal vibe. It's just straight up,
Straight up
metal
metal.
song.
And that the riffs on that song too, just pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
It's so
And
good.
Eric's voice, man, just frantic sounding, and
Yeah.
and his highs and stuff are insane, and
Yeah.
just such a killer record, man. I mean, it's if you like doom metal, if you like, you know, stuff that, yeah, and one of the things too, like I think that nowadays when people talk about doom, I think the focus is always on the slowness of it. And yeah, it was especially in the 80s, it stood out
Hmm.
when a band was doing something slow, when you had all those bands playing fast all the time. But
Yeah.
the thing that people forget when they, listen to a record by Trouble or listen to the first Pentagram record, or even listen to Candlemass, there's tempo shifts
Right.
everywhere.
Yep.
They weren't just content to just play slow. Like they would like have a slow, doomy riff and then pick it up all
Sure.
within in the record. Like, they just had a great their use of dynamics on this record, on all their records really is
Yeah.
tremendous. They were never content to just play slow all the time for the sake of
Yep.
playing slow to show like how Sabbathy they were.
Right.
There's all kind of influences that stayed on this record. From Sabbath to Judas Priest to
Absolutely.
you know Deep Purple, whatever. I mean, it's in there.
Yep.
Um, Tremendous record, all time classic. That's my number one. And favorite
Perfect.
song on here again, "Bastards Will Pay."
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, there's not, when it comes to these last two, there's not a whole lot more that we can say that it probably hasn't already been said or been said, but we can still confess our love for them.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, the skull for me, just this is the one. This was my very first entry into trouble when I didn't get it. I was like, okay. And then once came back, saw him
that's a
live,
choice
went right went right back to this, and it just all clicked. And it's clicked ever since. And every single time I put it on, I mean I know this album backwards, forwards. I know all the little nuances, the little clicks, everything. But I will say too, like you were saying, as far as it doesn't always have to be slow. I will say I think this is probably the dirgiest, slowest album in the catalog.
for
But
sure.
even after that, Fear No Evil, that picks up the tempo right after Pray for the Dead.
Yeah,
So it's that perfect, like you said, they craft that dynamic and the ebb and flow through the whole thing just works. Favorite song is The Wish, followed closely by
great song.
Pray for the Dead. But yeah, I mean this is just such a grandiose album, and it puts you in that place. And listening and hearing Eric, sing the lyrics, everything just hits hard about this album. So, yep. And this was Eric actually has the painting that this came from. It was a great big oil painting that he had, above his bed at one of his places, but um I don't know where that ever ended up going, but it was a really, really cool piece of art. Not saying the cover doesn't look good, but when you see that, the original it was based off of, it's like, wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, really good. So, yep, number one for me, The Skull. Absolutely
Nice.
love it.
I think too, one of the things you were just talking about in terms of, we've talked about Eric's voice and his lyrics. Like one of the things like that was so good about him was not only does he come up, have interesting ideas lyrically and he'd come up with great vocal lines, but like it's his delivery too was so like it just fit, like when they're doing the skull, like you're there, man. You're like freaking you're on Golgotha. Like he just like
Yeah.
his voice is like, you know, uh tortured for lack of a better word. He's just
Sure.
really like he sells every lyric, man. Like he's just one of the singers you listen to and you're like, I always use the phrase he means that shit.
It's very, very true. Yeah, he did too. You can listen to any Trouble album, and the conviction is there. There was no phone ins any place. When he went in to do this, he did it. So I always remember him saying, after they'd play a song or something, he'd be like, "That was a jam, man."
Yeah.
He'd get all excited about it. And if Chuck is listening, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about too. Him and I have said that too. So, all right. Well, I think you and I were, for the most part, pretty close on our rankings. And again, this could change tomorrow. Who knows? But no
Yeah.
such thing as a bad Trouble album. That's for sure.
Truth. Facts.
All right. Well, we want to know, if you're a Trouble fan, what are your rankings? We have comment sections here, so pop them in there, rank them for us. We are interested to see. Give us the stories behind why you rank one over the other. We like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. When did you first discover Trouble? When did you see him live for the first time? How many times have you seen him?
Yeah.
What your favorite songs are? Like join in, man. We want
Yeah.
you to take part.
Get in the conversation. We like to hear
Get
from
in.
everybody.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everybody's off to a really good New Year's 2025. Butch and I got all kinds of stuff coming up. We want to hear from you, like we just said. Tell us what you want to hear about, and we'll get on it as quick as possible. And all kinds of cool stuff coming. I'm excited,
Uh,
Butch. I'm really
Me
excited,
too.
man.
pumped up. Doesn't take much to get me pumped to talk about metal, but like
Oh
when
no.
we talk about metal, I'm really pumped. And then like seriously, man, I just want to, we thank everyone that's taken the time to, to check out the show, to comment on it, and to
Yeah.
subscribe. It's been really cool. Like so far, I know we're both really looking forward to 25 and building the channel up. So tell your friends, man, come on board. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Get on here and just nerd out with us, man. We,
Yeah,
we
be a geek, man. Be a nerd. Be a dork. I mean, look at us.
that's what it's all
Well,
about, man.
I won't say that Mike looks it, but look at me. Dork.
No, 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 no. Dork here
Metal
too.
geek.
So come geek out with us over metal.
Yeah.
All right. Until the next time, I am Merciful Mike.
I'm Butch Ballich
We'll see you on the next episode of
for the
For the
sake
Sake of
of heaviness.
Heaviness. One day we're gonna nail it, but
One
one
day.
day.